The US has carrots and sticks to shape the way other states might approach multilateral goals in a way that they want to. But it's taken away all the carrots already.
Welcome to Save Us from Hell, a podcast about the United Nations. I am your co-host, Mark Leon Goldberg. I'm a journalist. I cover the United Nations and have covered the United Nations since 2005. That makes it 20 years, Anjali.
Look at that, 20 years. What are you going to do to celebrate your anniversary?
Oh, I don't know. Go bonkers at the UN gift shop.
Look, that's a very attractive place to shop.
Well, it's funny. Last time I was there, I bought a flag from North Macedonia for my daughter. It was part of the odd inside joke we have about North Macedonia.
That is a, first-class flag, too.
Oh, it's a really good one.
It's a really good flag, yeah.
And now it's sitting prominently in her room.
Look at that. I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Anjali Dayal. I'm an associate professor of international relations at Fordham University in New York, where I teach and do research and write and buy umbrellas at the UN gift shop.
So, Anjali, we are going to talk about elections today, elections for new UN Security Council members and the election of the new president of the General Assembly, Annalena Baerbock. But first, big breaking news on the equestrian front.
Yeah. World Horse Day, officially going to be July 11th.
Ooh.
2025. Mark your calendars, everybody. World Horse Day, as put forth by Mongolia, as is appropriate. 165 votes in favor, 0 abstentions, 1 vote against.
Who voted against World Horse Day, pray tell?
The United States, because, World Horse Day infringes upon sovereignty.
Is that really the justification that was given in their explanation of vote?
Yeah. So, World Horse Day proposed by Mongolia, initiated by the president of Mongolia, co-sponsored by Austria, Bahrain, Brazil, Korea, the Republic of China, Venezuela, Qatar, Lesotho, Morocco, the Russian Federation, the Portuguese Republic, Germany, Thailand, Turkey, Japan, and 5 countries in Central Asia, right? So we would call this a broad-based coalition of people in favor of observing a World Horse Day that is fundamentally costless. Mm-hmm. It's one of these symbolic days that countries put forth to try and sort of rally energy around a particular cause that's important to them.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed this before. They are kind of meaningless, these world days, but they do carry meaning for certain individual countries that, want to promote something cultural or economic from their own country. And other countries usually just kind of go along to get along because, why not? There's no need to antagonize Mongolia over a meaningless resolution commemorating, celebrating horses.
100%. This is easy diplomatic capital on the table. You can take it or you can set it on fire.
Yeah.
And the United States has decided to set it on fire.
Why? What was the justification here?
Well, I'll read you the justification in whole because it's very short and I feel like we have to sort of sit with it to realize I'm going to tell you at the outset that this is about World Horse Day. And this is the text as delivered by Maria Elias, ECOSOC advisor, yesterday, June 3rd, as delivered. Thank you, Mr. President. The United States thanks Mongolia for its leadership and efforts in facilitating the process on this resolution. The United States also appreciates the efforts by several members to seek a compromise throughout the negotiation, including to remove preambular climate references that distracted from the true matter under consideration, aside, horses. However, the text of this resolution contains positions we cannot support, which compels us to call the vote today. Regrettably, there were no textual accommodations in support of consensus despite initial flexibility during open negotiations. Regarding preambular language on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Sustainable Development Goals, ding, 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 the United States has made it clear that the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Sustainable Development Goals impinge upon state sovereignty as a soft form of global governance, and we will no longer reaffirm them as a matter of course in UN resolutions. For these reasons, the United States will call a vote on this resolution. Thank you. So the vote obviously passes 165-1.
So here it is. I mean, this is a trend that you and I have monitored and followed. in forums more consequential than a vote on world horses, in places like the UNICEF Executive Committee,
Yes.
in which the United States gums up the works because there's a reference in a resolution in question to the Sustainable Development Goals, which the United States now affirmatively rejects.
Yes.
And again, it's just worth emphasizing the phrase that I have used to describe this. This is like not the US just walking away, it's flipping over the table on its way out.
That's right.
The Sustainable Development Goals are the heart of everything the United Nations does today. It's the organizing principle of so many different things, and they're agreed upon. They've been agreed upon 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so the SDGs are like often reaffirmed as a matter of course, which is useful because it reminds everyone that these things are still important. But now the US is just rejecting to the reaffirmation as a matter of course of the SDGs.
And, part of what's happening here is this idea that there shouldn't be a pro forma acceptance of anything that the US thinks is objectionable, right? But this is settled, agreed on language that states have over and over again reaffirmed. So they are not going to open it up for discussion on something as pro forma as World Horse Day. And so what the US is doing is essentially being diplomatically antagonistic because it can and because it wants to be in the service of undermining these larger shared goals, as you say, flipping over the tables. I do think it's worth noting, as you said, that this is part of a larger trend of the US either objecting to or rejecting and voting against these sort of larger world X day of whatever things. And not always for the same stated reason. So this is one in particular where they have dug down in the Sustainable Development Goals, which follows another trend we've been watching, the US trying to upend agreed upon, comparatively not contentious ideas that the UN is trying to advance. We talked about World Hope Day, which the US voted against in March, advanced by Kiribati. It was the only country in the world to vote against that also. And the stated reason given there was that it was superfluous, that there didn't need to be a World Hope Day because there was already a World Brotherhood Day or whatever, and a World Peace Day, right? So why do we also need hope? And so it is both part of this larger trend of rejecting explicitly agreed upon language on things around the SDGs, which we should note our listeners already know, right? But structures so much of the work at
Yeah.
the United Nations that rejecting them is not simply rejecting the language, it's rejecting a whole strand of effort, of policy, of coordination. And on the other hand, the US just making itself a diplomatic nuisance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basically saying, like, I see this easy diplomatic capital on the table, and I'm going to set it on fire.
I mean, you look at the Trump administration's broader foreign policy and its approach to soft power in particular, and it's kind of a similar element of the same piece, whether you're talking about trying to block foreign students from coming to the United States to study or acquiring other countries like Canada or territories like Greenland through territorial expansion.
Yes.
This is like a below the surface UN nerds like you and I focus
Mhm.
on it, but it's part of a broader trend, a bigger story about the Trump administration's ignorance of soft power, I'd say.
Yeah, that's right. And maybe not even ignorance of soft power, right? But outright rejection of the idea that power is consequential in the world. If
Yeah.
we think about it in a little sort of more of a complicated way, power comes from a lot of different places. And it's not necessarily so easily divided between soft and hard power, but that key distinction helps us think about, I think, the way they think about it. They believe anything can be gotten by force. Anyone thinking for more than a minute can tell you that actually not everything can be gotten by force. There are some things that you can only accomplish with the willing support of the people that you want to dominate or the people whose acquiescence you need. And on top of that, some things can't be accomplished by sheer force because it's too expensive, it's too hard. But they don't acknowledge other kinds of politics. They only acknowledge the politics of force. It's like, I struggle to call it hardline realist because it's not even a hardline realist, right? It's something else. It's a pure understanding of state force as being just unchecked brutality.
So in terms of just like the day-to-day operations of the UN, I mean, this is not going to like stop UN member states from accepting the Sustainable Development Goals and reaffirming them. But I do wonder, to the extent that the United States, the Trump administration, continues to take this stance against any reference to the SDGs, if at some point will other countries find the path of least resistance to simply not routinely reaffirm the SDGs? I mean, thus far they haven't. As you said, this vote was lopsided, just one against. But, it's not out of the realm of possibility that at some point in the future, states preemptively don't reaffirm the SDGs as a matter of course. And to me, that undermines the political power and influence of the SDGs should that outcome happen.
Yeah, I mean, I guess let's go back to that lack of understanding of power, and in particularly it's like soft diplomatic power that you talked about. The US has carrots and sticks to shape the way other states might approach multilateral goals in a way that they want to. But it's taken away all the carrots already. Like all of the foreign aid, all of the sort of like soft touches of diplomatic power, all of the efforts at assistance. It has constructed itself as a hegemonic power in the world that doesn't want your students, that doesn't want your ideas, that doesn't want your flourishing. So, in that condition, if states are going to back away from the SDGs, I assume it will do so because they have their own reasons, or because the United States will start extracting even more, somehow,
Yeah.
punitive costs from other countries for continuing to support them. And I don't know what kind of diplomatic leverage the US has at this point. Like, are you going to invade Kiribati for supporting the Sustainable Development Goals? What are you going to do? Levy 150% tax on Djibouti? You've already done that, right? Like, if what their goal is to erode broader support for the SDGs, they don't have a ton of tools to do that, absent the willing participation of other countries or absent a willingness to really be brutal. I don't discount either, but we should consider what the possibilities are here.
So, Anjali, let's move on to the main event, the election of 5 new non-permanent members to the Security Council and the election of a new president of the General Assembly, the former Foreign Minister of Germany, Annalena Baerbock. But at this point, we're going to say goodbye to our free preview listeners and encourage you free preview listeners to listen on. You can get a subscription to this very podcast at globaldispatches.org or follow the link in the show notes of this episode. And we are going to be talking about how these very consequential elections, which just happened this week, will impact the near-term future of the United Nations. So get that subscription. Thank you for listening to Save Us From Hell. The show is co-hosted by me, Mark Leon Goldberg, and Anjali Dayal. It is edited and mixed by Levi Sharp. Our cover art is by Sarah D. Michelle. If you've not already done so, please subscribe to our show via Substack at globaldispatches.org. We are sustaining this show by selling subscriptions to it via Substack. You can get a discounted subscription by going to globaldispatches.org/save us. You can follow the link in the show notes as well. And finally, if you'd like to discuss this episode with us, please visit globaldispatches.org and click on chat, where we'll be around to discuss what we discussed in this episode. Thanks, and be sure to tell friends and colleagues about To Save Us From Hell, a new podcast about the United Nations.